Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dad and Daughter Reads, a book club podcast. I'm your host, Dad, and today we've got a big one, the finale of Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones, covering pages 307 through 424. This book has taken us on a wild, weird, and blood-soaked ride, and we're excited to dig into how it all wraps up. And of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Miranda, whose takes are sharp, her humor is sharper, and who still somehow saw a few of these twists coming before I did.
Hello. Just want to let everyone know first that after today's episode, we're taking a short break next week. But don't worry, we'll be back on June 14th with a brand new book, Immaculate Conception by Ling Huang. We'll be starting with part 1, Early Style, so make sure to grab a copy and read along with us.
But before we get into this finale, let's talk about what we've been up to the past week. What have you been up to, Miranda?
Oh man, this week has been busy. It's a long, exhausting week for me personally. Wednesday was fine and normal, I'm pretty sure, but then the kid that I nanny, he had a half day on Thursday and then he was off on Friday. So when he's out of school, then I am with him all day. So we were running around all day Thursday, and I did get let out early on Friday, but I had a friend's show to go see. So an old coworker of mine and his newly fiance actually did a performance at this cool little theater in Midtown Manhattan. His fiance is a dancer and he is a musician. And so they did a cool collaboration. And I went and saw that. It was super good. And then Saturday, and then I had to work on Memorial Day weekend at my other job, my perfume job. So Saturday, I was in the Upper East Side. That's where I did most of my reading this week, actually, of Buffalo Hunter Hunter. Because it's really nobody really goes up there. It's a pretty quiet store. So I was up there working Saturday, and then my friend who also lives up there, we got drinks after. And then Sunday, I worked at our store in Soho, which was a long day, and that is a heavy foot traffic store. So it's just a long day. And then yesterday, I worked at our store in Williamsburg. So I did a tour of all the New York City stores. And yesterday, again, I was by myself and not super, super busy, and we closed early. So I was able to finish Buffalo Hunter Hunter yesterday at work. But I was kind of it got busy in the afternoon. So I was kind of in and out, but we got there. And then, I met up with some friends because we got off early and went out. So it's just a lot of working and trying to meet up with friends at the same time and, social obligations, work obligations. Very exhausting, but I made it. Here I am. I'm alive. I also watched the new episode of whatchamacallit, what we're watching. Murderbot, yes. Was able to watch that, and it got exciting at the end. It did. And then also, I was also watching because I was I have Apple TV, I was watching The Studio. Have you seen The Studio with
No, but that's on my list to watch next.
It's pretty good. It's really good. One of the episodes is he's a super movie nerd, and there's one episode where he's on set and they're just he's getting so involved in it, and they're dude, you gotta go, and they're trying to get him out of the way and stuff, and he keeps causing all this chaos. It's really funny. And then there was another episode where they're filming on film a noir movie, and then one of the films goes missing, and so then he takes over as this noir type character throughout the episode. It was really funny. It's really smart. It's a really good show. So highly recommend that. And then I also keep forgetting to mention
Seth Rogen.
Yeah, Seth Rogen.
I think Catherine Hahn's in it too.
She
right?
is in it. We all know I love Catherine Hahn. And she's so funny. She's so funny in it. Yeah, but then I also keep forgetting to mention that I'm watching Poker Face too on Peacock, which that's the show with Natasha Lyonne. And they're on season 2 now. I remember when I watched it a couple years ago, I loved it. And so I'm also watching that. So trying to watch that when I'm watching episodes as I get ready in the morning and before bed at night. And yeah, that's about it. And then listening to Amy Poehler's Good Hang podcast.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So, yeah. But no, I wasn't able. I'm still, this week, I'm going to dedicate to reading and finishing Stone Sky. Because I have not been able to like just sit and read it. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing this week since we have a break before I start Immaculate Conception. So didn't get to read any of it this week, or last week, but this week I'm dedicating to finishing that book. So that's my week. How about yours?
Cool. My week is also really busy. I'm starting a new role at my company. I'm moving over from data science engineering into the regular engineering department. So I've been kind of planning things out with my new role, looking into what I need to do, what I need to learn, what I want to do the first 90 days, the first 180 days. So I've been kind of putting all that stuff together in Notion. So I've been watching a bunch of Notion videos too on top of that. So I didn't really get a lot of reading done either. I did read a book called The Para Method, which is kind of part of what I was talking about with Notion. And that's like it's like organizing your digital life. Like Para stands for projects. What is it? Projects, areas, resources, and archive. So it's kind of like 4 different things that you can like, organize yourself in. Projects are stuff that have a beginning and an end. Areas are things like that are your area of responsibilities. So they really don't have an ending. I mean, they could end eventually, but you don't know when they're going to end. And then resources are just different things, like could be a document, links, whatever. And then archive is when you're done with something, you archive it. So you don't have to worry about it anymore, but you can always go find it later using search. So I got all that set up in Notion.
That's
for this new role I'm taking on. So I didn't get a lot of reading done other than that book. As far as, anyway, the Expanse series, I'm still on book 4. So what else? I did watch Murderbot. It was really good. I'm enjoying that show a lot. I didn't get to watch any more Severance. I need to finish that. That was my plan, to finish Severance, then move on to the studio. So that's what I'm going to do. Hopefully I'll get Severance finished soon. I am actually off work next week because I start my new role the week after. So I wanted to take a break.
Oh, nice.
Before all that starts. Yeah. Uh-oh. Here we go. All right.
And the car alarm is crazy.
Wow.
Because the bass was so bumping that it made the car alarm go off.
Awesome. All right. See, this is real life, people, in New York City. All right. Yeah. So what was I saying? Oh, yeah. Reading. I did start listening to a new book. I'm listening to Dungeon Crawler Carl, which I read last year. I read all 7 of them, but supposedly and it is because I'm about 5 chapters in now. The narrator for that book is really good because he does all these voices and it's so good. It's funny. It's a funny book to begin with. And then just this guy doing all these different voices makes it even better. So yeah, that's about it for me, I think.
No, I was thinking when you were talking about Notion, I was like, oh, wow, we should get sponsored by Notion. But then I was also thinking, I was like, wait, one of my friends recently like showed me something and they were on Notion. And I was like, oh my God, that's what me and my dad use for the podcast. And I remember it was my friend Jenny now, and because she has like a whole thing of pastries that she tries, cardamom buns. She's like taking note of like the best places in the city and like the best Swedish bakeries that have cardamom buns. Because I think she's going to Sweden. And I was like, that's so funny.
She keeps all that information in Notion.
Yeah. Like all of her cardamom bun research is in Notion.
I mean, Notion is really good. It's really powerful. Like
that's
you set up all
so
these,
funny.
You can set up all these databases and, they have relations to each other. So you can hook them all together. Like you can take a project and you can have a task database, put all your tasks in there. And then each task that's for that project, you can relate it to that. So when you go to that project, you can see all the tasks you need to do to get that project completed. And then you can pretty much make a property for just about anything you need in each project or whatever. So
anyway, sponsor us Notion is all I was going to say.
yeah, I don't think that's happening. All right. Yeah, but Notion is really good. I like it a lot. All right, let's move on. No social media book buzz, because I really have not even been on social media that much. So I don't know what the hell's going on. And this book is going to be a lot anyway here for this finale. There's a lot to talk about, along with our final assessments at the end. So let's get into that, starting off with the recap.
All right, let's do it. So last time, Arthur sends the sheriff out to Goodstab's dugout, essentially killing him. The sheriff. Goodstab comes back to the church to continue his story, and we get hints that Arthur did something bad to him or his tribe. In his story, a boy is killed by a vampire that wasn't Goodstab. The boy is lying on Weaselplume's robes. Arthur believes Goodstab is trying to get a confession out of him and is resolving that he is likely to die by gory vampire death. Goodstab catches Arthur trying to run out into the wilderness, brings him back to the church, ties him up on the cross as Jesus, and presents to him all the men he's killed in a very dramatic scene involving fire. We find out that Catman wasn't dead, that Arthur told the soldiers to shoot Heavy Runner and the tribe, and the Flowers family from San Francisco are Arthur's son and grandson. In a nutshell.
Yes. Crazy. And it's going to get crazier.
And it gets even crazier.
All right. Chapter 21, The Noxzerhers, A Dark Gospel. This was a very long chapter, probably the longest in the book. Mm-hmm. So Goodstab thinks the Catman wants him to suffer. Goodstab finds Weaselplume skinned, but still alive.
So
he kills.
Sad. That was so sad.
Yeah. He kills Weaselplume, and the Catman is standing behind him while he's doing this. And the Catman is talking in Pekuni at first, meaning he had to live with them for at least 2 years to learn their language, according to Goodstab. And we find out that the Catman is 450 years old.
Assuming, because he says something about this too, like that he crossed the oceans, he'd never seen Goodstab had never seen an ocean, but Catman knew about the ocean. So I'm assuming the Catman came from Europe.
Yeah.
Right, which is why it's so jarring that he's speaking Pekuni and that he's been there, which I thought was very, very interesting.
Well, it's been a couple years, right? Because, Goodstab had 2 years where he spent with Cooney, or not Cooney,
Nappy.
What was his name? Nappy, yeah, Nappy. So during those 2 years, I guess the Catman could have learned the Cooney.
Well, maybe, but the Catman's also been there for so long.
Yeah, and we don't know how long he's really been there.
Yeah, true.
Because he was in the cage, and he said he got caught on the boat. That's how they caught him, because he didn't know where to go.
Sure. Oh, right. Yeah. But yeah, I think, when we get later on in the chapter, the reasons why I think it's very interesting that he was from Europe, because of what he ends up doing to the tribe in this chapter.
All right, so they end up fighting, and Goodstab ends up drinking a small amount of Catman's blood, which knocks him out. So during the fight, a little bit of blood, like a drop of blood, got into his mouth, into Goodstab's mouth from Catman, and it just completely knocked him out.
Well, and I think he also was thinking maybe it would give him extra strength to drink his blood too, and then it didn't, and then he ended up
it was the
falling
exact
on his
opposite.
ass. Yeah.
All right, he wakes up in a steel cage inside of a frozen river, which was crazy. Goodstab ends up getting out of the cage, but is locked into these icy tunnels for 4 years, while the Catman keeps throwing people down, and Goodstab feeds off of them. He ends up saving all the hair of the people that he's drained, and then in a fit of rage tore apart one of the trappers thrown down. And inside this man, he found a flint arrowhead. So I guess this guy had been shot by an arrow before and never got the arrowhead out of his body. So since it's made out of flint, he's able to use it to create a fire with the hair and escapes from the tunnels. Because what was happening was the Catman had a hole, but he would ice it back over so that he couldn't get out. Yeah.
Right. And then also important to note that the Catman was throwing down specifically like white trappers for Good Step to drink. So he ends up looking like a white man now.
So after Good Stab gets his way out, he finds his tribe, the Small Robes. He goes into their camp, and the Catman is the leader. That was crazy. Yes. That was a crazy part.
Well, yes. And see, this is kind of where I'm like, okay, so the Catman being European, I'm assuming, and completely erasing Good Stab's identity as a Pikuni by forcing him to feed on white men, and him posing as Pikuni because he's been eating Pikuni.
Right.
Now making Good Stab come in as a white man, erasing his identity and taking over the tribe. And I was like, yep, sounds about right.
Sounds about white.
Exactly. So I liked that. I liked that. I liked that the author did that. That was a really cool way to, write about that and symbolize that, like these white men coming in and completely stealing tradition and identity. And we get more into like the tradition and making fun of it in this too, So I was like, yeah, that fucking sucks. But then also the theme of the Pikuni people, the Blackfeet people, doing whatever they need to do to survive. I mean, the way that Good Stab broke his own arm and, the way he like clawed, gnawed, got the hell out of that ice cage was horrifying and also such a show of strength and survival.
So after the Catman shows himself as the leader, they have a rather funny conversation with some jabs back and forth that I enjoyed because I think the Catman's a pretty good villain here.
Yeah, great villain.
Yeah. And so the tribe ends up tying Good Stab to a pole while they go hunt for meat. He ends up escaping and running off. He feeds and then comes back and ties himself back to the pole because he can't leave the Pikuni to the Catman. So he feels guilty about just running off. The Catman had the Pikuni do the sun dance, which is usually done during their holy time. And all the other Pikuni did not like this, thought it was wrong. So they must have eventually gotten some kind of doubt about this guy, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and they'd also already been talking about like some of their people have been going missing, right? Because obviously he was eating them.
Straining them, yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. And then and this was terrible too. Poor Good Stab, forced to be a white man and watch this, European ass man pretend to be a Pikuni and make them do something so blasphemous in their, culture.
Right.
Terrible.
And the Catman makes a Good Stab dance during this sun dance, which was kind of crazy in itself, where they stuck some things in his chest. It was tied around to a rope. Yeah, that doesn't sound fun. It sounds painful.
Yeah, but then also how some of them too, some of the tribe was kind of like happy about him doing it though, because they wanted to see the white man suffer.
Right.
And Good Stab was like, and I don't blame them. So.
The Catman takes him to the backbone. So he takes him back up into the mountains and breaks both of his legs, one of his arms, and his back. And then runs over him with his horse.
Yep. Sure did.
And leaves him there. So Good Stab starts feeding off small animals to get his strength back, then works his way up to bigger animals and finally back to men. This takes a long time, and he eventually sees some small rose Pikuni that he recognizes from the Catman's camp, and realizes they have broken up the camp and dispersed, probably because the Catman got bored of them. At least that's what Good Stab is thinking here. He helps the two small robes. One of them is killed in the water, and the other one is her brother, which is important later on.
Yeah, because earlier, Good Stab and Kills in the Water kind of had a little relationship, because she would come and try and help him while he was tied up.
Right. Yep. Good Stab goes off he found where their camp used to be and saw that it was destroyed and the people were killed. And then he sees the Catman's tent or whatever, and goes up there, and the Catman is up there. The Catman tells him that Kills in the Water has a special type of blood that only comes once in a generation. And the other Pikuni hid her from him, and that's why he killed them all. They start fighting again, but the Catman gets the advantage and pins Good Stab down. And then Good Stab says to the Catman that he'll bring Kills in the Water to him if the Catman will leave forever. So they both agree to meet at the Death Lodges and agree that Good Stab will bring Kills in the Water to him. And the Catman gives him 1 day to do that. So Good Stab runs off, but instead of going to get Kills in Water first, he gathers up 300 buffalo and brings them storming back to run over the Catman in the Death Lodges, and it ends up breaking him. But the Catman had recently drank from a child, so that made his healing a lot faster. And Good Stab still couldn't overpower him and ran off. And he started running towards where Kills in the Water was. And he grabs Kills in the Water and takes her to the Island of Spirits, trying to lure the Catman there. I guess this was an island that he had been, Good Stab had been storing traps here from the trappers he killed. So when the Catman comes, Good Stab holds onto Kills in the Water. Catman steps on 2 traps, 1 on each foot as he walks up. And then the Catman bites Kills in the Water and starts drinking her blood. Then Good Stab also bites her. But he's got a plan here. So what he had done before this all happened, he had bit his own tongue so that it was bleeding. And he held Kills in the Water's blood in his mouth, and it allowed her blood to mix with his from his bitten tongue. And then he pushed the mixed blood back into Kills in the Water. And then the Catman ended up drinking that. This is basically like he's drinking Good Stab's blood, which is going to hopefully knock him out, is what Good Stab's thinking, because that's what happened to him. Right. So the Catman rushes Good Stab, but fell off of him once Good Stab's blood had taken hold. So that is what happened. And then while he was down, Good Stab had grabbed some tobacco and a pipe before all of this, and he took it out. And while the Catman was out, he kind of forced the Catman to smoke from it for the rest of the day. And then he staked Catman deep into the ground. He even used some of that cage he was kept in, big rods of steel, to stake him deep into the ground so that he couldn't get up.
Yeah. And great plan, first of all, but also his Good Stab's one thing that he that's what he's telling Arthur, this is my confession. This is what I feel the worst about doing. And I still don't know if I did it because I was trying to save the Pikuni people or if I just really hated the Catman.
Right.
Which I thought,
because he sacrificed Kills in the water.
Because he sacrificed Kills in the water. Yeah. And she was a young girl and she reminded him of his daughter, and she was scared and all this stuff, which I thought was such a cool layer to add to Good Stab. And also just his whole kind of thing is, he became this monster and he has to do these terrible things to his people in order to stay as one of his people, which is such an interesting, that's such a hard thing to grapple with, So I like that the author's kind of making this, just kind of the trite of the Native American, right? These horrible, awful things that they have to sacrifice and give up and put up with in order to survive. So that's kind of what I got from that.
All right. So now the Catman was still slightly alive, and Good Stab started feeding him blood from a fish. And he did this for 4 years. So, this chapter alone, we have jumped 8 years.
Yeah.
Because he was stuck in the ice tunnel for 4 years, and now he's been feeding fish to the Catman for 4 years. And what this ended up doing was turning the Catman into a fish. And then Good Stab just let him go into the water as a fish.
Yeah.
Which I don't think I like this plan.
Why?
Because, I mean, he's not dead. He may come back again in the future. You never know what can happen.
He might, but I think, and Good Stab knows that because he's like, I mean, like, he might try and bite onto a human, but they're just the likelihood because he's in the water and he can't leave the water, and people aren't usually just like in the water,
right?
so
but
he
there's
has
usually
to drink
some way.
fish and stay
There's
a
usually
fish.
some way to kill a vampire, whether that's putting a stake in their heart, cutting off their head.
Yeah, but he
blah,
doesn't.
blah, blah,
but he doesn't
whatever.
know what it is, and the Catman didn't tell him. Like,
I thought they had a discussion about that.
Well, they did have a discussion, but I don't remember the Catman actually saying like what you had to do in order to kill them.
Right, because he kind of says he kind of plays into those different mythos of how to kill a vampire. Because he says, he says something about, yeah, that's what we don't know. Is it the brain or is it the heart? He says something about that, the mind or the heart.
Yeah, like he gives.
Because he said something about tearing his head off, and then that's why the Catman said that. So it's kind of like, which is it? And that kind of plays to us because a lot of people know you either stake in the heart. Hell, and like D&D, you have to put a stake in their heart, and you have to cut their head off, and you have to put them in their coffin. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to kill a vampire depending on the story, right?
Yeah, but I don't think that we ever get any like actual confirmation.
We will eventually.
But I don't
time,
think I don't think the Catman tells him, because why would the Catman tell him?
Right.
But
I think if I was Good Stab, I wouldn't just turn him into a fish and throw him in the water. I'd still cut his head. I mean, he's a fish now. It'd be a lot easier to cut his damn head off. Then you just throw them both in the water.
So as a fish, you'd cut his head off.
Right. Once he turned into the fish, then you cut the head off.
Sure.
And you throw them both in the water.
But then maybe he also just wanted vengeance, and he was like, no, now you have to be a fish you have to stay alive and be a fish,
Yeah, there is that. But there's still a chance he could.
Actually, he turns into the shark from Jaws and eats a lot of people, and that's how he becomes a person again in the 70s.
Yeah, see?
So. And there you go. That's my theory. That Jaws is actually a vampire.
But it did take a long time for him to turn into a fish, 4 years. So I guess he would have to eat or feed off a lot of either some kind of other animal other than fish or a person or whatever. And he just may not be able to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it's not a bad plan. I feel like the likelihood of him becoming another land creature is slim to none.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but it would take like hundreds of years probably.
Yeah. We can ask AI later and see what it says.
You can. I'm not asking AI shit.
All right. Moving on to chapter 22, the absolution of 3 persons. So we are back with Arthur here, May 26, 1912. Good Stab didn't kill Arthur or turn him yet. The church is all cleaned up, but there's mice all over, and Arthur contemplates stealing the cat back from the prostitute place. Arthur wonders when his
prostitute place, the whorehouse.
Well, I was going to say whorehouse, but that's, I don't know. I said whore in the last
brothel
episode, and it didn't seem like you liked that word very much.
Just the way you said it. A whorehouse is a whorehouse, though. Prostitute place is hilarious.
All right. Well, let me change that.
Sorry, I guess you can't win. Never mind.
So Arthur contemplates stealing the cat back from the whorehouse, and then Arthur wonders when his demise will come, thinking it would be coming from Good Stab. So there's this whole little section about he starts breaking some eggs during his sermon each week to prove that they were in the presence of God and the egg was not tainted. Mm-hmm. That's weird. Is that like a normal thing I didn't look that up. Do they do that?
Well, no, because that's what that lady did.
Well, I know, but I'm just wondering if that's actually part of Lutheran.
Well, no, because then remember he said in it, he was like, "And I don't know how God would feel about me doing this, adding this, like, uh, weird ritual into the Christian
Oh,
church, but I'm doing it anyway because 'cause I'm
yeah. I guess
scared
he was
of
just doing it to
vampires."
prove to the congregation that, yeah,
Yeah, because he says something about, like, "I probably shouldn't be doing this because it's not
right. I remember that. Yeah,
Christian, but I'm gonna do it anyway because we're all scared of vampires."
right. All right. The next week, June 2nd, 1912, chapter 23, before his last sermon, he accidentally broke an egg and it was tainted. So he has a whole bunch of eggs that the people have been giving him. And one of them he dropped and it was a tainted egg. And he broke several and a lot of them were tainted. And then finally he found a good one. And then he took the next one after that, thinking it was also going to be a good one. And so he starts his sermon. He notices a raven sitting up in the rafters near the open window before the sermon began. And then he starts hallucinating, seeing all the dead people from the town and all the Indians from the Marias massacre in his church. And he ends up hiding his diary and thinks of being skinned and drained by Good Stab. And all we know is that he has just disappeared.
Yeah, he was big scared.
And that's the last entry in his diary. And we don't know really what has happened to him. All right. Moving on to chapter 24. So this chapter is titled The Buchanan Manuscript. It's really a whole section. And there's several diary entries from Etsy. So we're back into the future here, January 12th, 2013. She has just finished reading Arthur's journal. Etsy has. She goes into the names Flowers and Buchanan. She goes into how the names Flowers and Buchanan came to be, because apparently at some point someone said their name was Buchanan and the woman thought she said bouquet and they translated it to English as flowers. So that's why his son, Arthur's son and grandsons have a different last name.
Yeah.
So Etsy burns some papers that she has from, I guess, some notes that she's been taking. I didn't really catch where those papers were from. And while she's doing this outside on her balcony, she sees a man standing out by a tree.
Yeah,
Just some little foreshadowing there.
right. Yeah. But I think because, like, in the beginning, she's like, and that's it. And we still don't know what happened to him. And my university doesn't care about it. And he's not worthy of getting tenure. So she's like, so I did all this work and didn't get what I wanted. And I still don't know what happened to this man. So I think she's probably burning like stuff like that because she's mad that she did all this research and stuff and still has no answers. And it's like, she's like, no one would even believe this. Like, everybody would think this is just some fiction story. I think that her peers did, right? When they were like reading over it, they're like,
Right.
what is this bitch going on about? And then that's when we get into the Tresale and all that.
Right. Yeah, I didn't get in all that because I just thought it was dumb.
Okay. I think that's why. Well, I think that's why she was burning the papers.
Right. Okay. That's why I didn't really pay much attention to that, because I thought the part about all the French stuff was just silly. All right. January 17th, 2013. She gets a call from the librarian from the University of Wyoming or whatever it was that was holding the journal. And she tells her that the skin is made of human skin and that they've called the police to have them check, cold cases to see what was going on. But of course, we know that was made from one of the people that Good Stab had killed. Because that's where it came from. He's the one that put it with the food that the lady brought, but Arthur thought the lady brought it at first. Etsy's dad passed away during this time, and her cat is missing. She finds an unopened letter in her dad's Bible. So this is after she went to the funeral, got, whatever possessions from her that her dad had. One of them was a Bible, and in this Bible, there's an unopened letter, and she thinks someone put it in there for her because there's no postmark and it's not addressed for her dad. January 20th, 2013, she's hopped up on Benadryl and she thinks she saw a man with a bison head typing on her computer. So she comes out of her room, and there's a man with a giant bison head typing on her computer. She runs down the hall, calls 911. The cops come, but no one is there. But there is a pair of leather gloves near her keyboard. Was she imagining it?
Yeah, and I liked when she was like, "What have you been eating, good stab?" When she's like in her stupor. Yeah. It's like she's, like, oh my God.
Yeah, because she calls him good stab. Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, well, what have you been drinking or something? Yeah. Because he's like has the bison head on. Because I would assume that it's him. Yeah.
And not a buffalo. Because do you know the story of that?
I don't actually.
They are actually bison. That's the actual name of what they are. But when the settlers, aka colonists, came over because they had seen a buffalo, a water buffalo, what's called a water buffalo, which are buffaloes in Africa, they thought that they looked the same, so they called them buffaloes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. They're actually bisons.
Right.
So yeah, and this also, when he put the little part in, the author put the part in about the leather gloves near her keyboard, that kind of gave me a clue that I bet that it was Good Stab is the one that pulled the thing out, the journal out of the wall.
That's a good catch. I didn't catch that.
January 21st, 2013, she's been reading about the Marias Massacre, which the anniversary is only a few days away. Good Stab now comes to her. He's the man with the bison head, obviously. And Taz, her cat, also returns. And someone else is here. Arthur is here. And he's been turned into a giant prairie dog, like a 7-foot long prairie dog.
Nasty, nasty, nasty. The way that she describes him as a prairie dog, I was like, yep, that sounds like nasty fucking Arthur to me. He's like wheezing. He's like, bleh. That's what I imagined. Terrible. Hated it. Hate him. Even as a prairie dog. But I was talking before, I was like, okay, so that prairie dog from the beginning, I'm assuming was Good Stab, just like released a prairie dog into her house.
Right.
To kind of like, give her a little jar, a little scare, a little foreshadow.
Right.
I've been feeding your great-great-great-grandfather prairie dogs, and he's about to show up at your place now as a prairie dog.
All right, so Good Stab ends up leaving, but he leaves behind the big bison head, which is actually a real bison head. Etsy finds some cigarettes that she had and starts giving them to Arthur. She lights them up and lets Arthur smoke these cigarettes, and it knocks him out.
Yeah. I also, again, love how dramatic Good Stab is here. The drama of it all.
Yeah.
It's like, family reunion and whatever.
Right.
But then I also do like that, which we get into now at the end, that he was basically offering her an opportunity to finish the job, right? Finish his revenge.
Right.
Which I want to talk about at the end.
Okay. All right, moving on. January 22nd, 2013. A bunch of stuff happens that's mundane.
Sure.
Like the whole thing with the cop and the woman. So basically the manager of the apartment brought the cops to do a welfare check. And it was all silly.
Yeah.
But anyway, she gets Arthur in her car and goes to Wyoming to the site of the Marias Massacre. Or Marias. I'm not sure which one. Probably Marias. January 23rd, 2013. So she's now at the site of the Marias Massacre, and this is the day that it happened, January 23rd. She reads the unopened letter that she found in the Bible, and it's a letter from Arthur about the details of the Marias Massacre. And during this letter, of course, he was talking all about some pudding and some food.
He gorged himself on pudding and then was throwing up. My God. Guy. And he wasn't even supposed to. He was like, I was just kind of walking around, and then I just kind of stumbled upon these soldiers, and I was like, hey, cool, I can be a hero, and just started hanging out with them and became one of them and then ate all their fucking pudding and got sick. This man is terrible. I hate
And then he
this man.
uses that. He's like, hey, he's like telling the scout. So he starts hanging out with the scout, the one that shot Heavy Runner.
Yeah.
And he's like telling him, hey, sooner we get this over with, the more we can,
The sooner we
can go back and have
eat
some pudding.
Because he was like, I was so cold and I was starving and I would have said anything to not be cold and to eat that pudding. So I said, shoot him.
Yep.
Ew, awful. I love too how like before, because she's talking into a tape recorder. She's like reading it out loud at the tape recorder at this point. And she was like, I was starting to feel bad for him because he's like this giant nasty prairie dog that I have to keep drugging up and taking out. And he's so pathetic. And then I read this letter and now I am like, never mind.
Right.
Yeah. Because literally, like, it's so crazy. He really just stumbled upon these soldiers and was like, you know what? This fucking sucks. I'm hungry. I'm cold. Kill all these motherfuckers so we can go back and eat pudding.
Oh my goodness. So Etsy, she had brought some tools with her and she gets this big rope like thing that where you can saw stuff with if you with holding the two ends. And she uses this to cut off Arthur's head, which I guess is the proper way to kill a vampire in this story. Goodstab is there because he is there for a memorial ride that the Blackfeet do on the anniversary of the Marias massacre. So he's there. He's kind of down away and she's kind of off up above a little bit. But he sees her over there and sees what she does. And he kind of gives her the nod. Yes, that's what I wanted to happen.
Right.
So, and then as he rides away on his horse, he has a construction helmet with him. And that's how we know that he was the one who dug the journal out of the wall. Mm-hmm. He was the day worker.
Yeah.
And I was suspecting that for a while now. And then when I saw the thing about the gloves, I was like, yeah, that's what put it all together for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we also find out that before she came to the Marias massacre spot, she had stopped at the university and she used the ashes from her father to destroy the journal because we had a whole thing about, keeping it in the airtight thing. And so it's not exposed. And apparently the stuff in ashes, which has some bone and other things in it, will destroy the ink on the paper. So she takes the ashes and spreads it on every page. And then that way it's going to be destroyed. And she also destroyed all the files that she had on it. So there's no record of it anywhere anymore.
Right.
And that's pretty much the end.
Yeah. I really loved the end because it really was a chance for some like redemption from her. Like she had to be the one. Goodstab made her the one to be like, put an end to this whole thing, like put a stop to it. And I like the end where she holds up her fist to him, like, out of respect, but he doesn't do it back. And it's because, yeah, you did the right thing finally, but that doesn't make up for all of the horrible, terrible massacres that white people and colonizers have done to Native Americans in this country, right? And she also acknowledges that too. Like she's like, and I get it. Like I get why he wouldn't do it back. So I liked that the author did that. I like that the author was like, yeah, like it's important for white people to acknowledge what they've done and do what they can to make things right. But at the end of the day, like you're never going to actually make up for the massacres that you've done to these people. But these people are always still going to survive anyway. Beautiful message.
Yes. And I don't know if you read the acknowledgments at the end. They're pretty good. They're not your normal acknowledgments either of like, I want to thank blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Of course, that's in there, but there's like, it's like 6 or 7 pages where he talks about how he came to write the novel and other things that he's looked into, and it's really good. So if you haven't read it, you should go back and read that section.
Yeah, I will. I think because I just kind of skimmed through it. I also realized too that my copy is signed.
Oh, really?
Copy of my book is signed. I'm holding it up
Where
now.
did you get it at?
I got it at I talked about where I got it in one of the
I think you did
episodes. But
oh, that's
where's
right.
my bookmark?
Because you went to that.
There it is.
Did you go to? Is that the one where you went to the bookstore?
McNally Jackson. Yes.
Yeah.
McNally Jackson. Because it's like a pretty well-known bookstore in New York City. So he must have gone in there and signed and did a signing.
Well, I have the Barnes and Noble copy, which has some extras at the end. One, I'm going to read part of it after I tell you about my final assessment. So let's get into that now. So I really enjoyed Stephen Graham Jones's writing style for this book. I liked the way it was set up. I liked that he used Native American terminology and Blackfeet names. Even though I'll be honest, sometimes I had to pause and double check what certain words meant. I kind of got confused there, especially with I still want to know why the hell they were called fat melters. Did they just do a lot of cardio or what? Anyway, but it actually made the whole thing feel more immersive using those names and everything. And it really pulled me deeper into the story. And one of the things I loved most was how he worked actual Blackfeet history into the plot. The Marias massacre is woven in so well, and the way the historical buffalo killings by white settlers are tied into Goodstab's revenge. It gave his actions so much more weight. And then pacing-wise, the book starts strong, and it just continues to get better. And I really liked the second half a lot. Couldn't put it down. It kept my attention the whole way through. And then Goodstab as a vampire is such a cool, layered character. And something actually I didn't mention, I just thought of that we talked about. Catman was really a good villain too. And I loved the banter back and forth between them. That was fun. Mm-hmm. And the contrast between his Goodstab's thirst for blood and Arthur Buchanan's over-the-top obsession with food was hilarious. That symbolism was super effective. And you start out kind of feeling sad for Arthur, but once you realize what he's really done, that sympathy disappears real fast. But overall, I'd give this one a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely recommend it. And if you pick it up, take a few minutes to look up the real history behind the events, because it'll make you, it'll hit even harder once you know all that history behind it. But so like I said, there's a part in here. Well, first of all, there's a part by the author, and then there's also a bunch of letters and stuff this is from the headquarters division of the Missouri, 1806. And then there's some letters between somebody named Hobbs and somebody named William Birth. And it talks about, because the letters are dated January 31st, 1870. And it talks about the Marias massacre. And there's some other stuff about the state of Montana and things that happened there with the pagan tribe. Mm-hmm. And I think this is there's a signature in this one called Bearhead. This is from 1915, but it's just more history to read about. It says it's only in the Barnes and Noble copy.
Yeah, I was looking. I don't have it.
Yeah. So the thing I wanted to read was, this is Stephen Graham Jones said, "I knew I wanted to have an Indian who couldn't die coming for the people who shot us in our lodges on January 23rd, 1870. But I didn't have a name for him. You'll see that name in here, right where I found it. More important, I only knew the basic facts of that day. Not that Heavy Runner was in the river. Not how many horses the soldiers stole. Not the sound of an axe splitting a skull. I dare you to read this and not want to let a whole horde of sharp-toothed monsters loose on America. It wouldn't be enough, but it would be a start. Until then, I'll make do with Goodstab. He's the one who will be sitting in the pew after the service is over."
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
was
awesome.
Pretty heavy.
Yeah, it is. It is heavy stuff. Going to my final assessment. I enjoyed this book a lot. The drama, the historical background, the writing was all incredible. I liked the way it was presented as this reading through an old journal and recount of Arthur's personal narrative. It was really creative and it added a whole lot of layers. I loved the ending, a chance for redemption for Etsy and her family line, a chance to make up for the wrongs of the past, but knowing that you can never truly make those horrors right. The story was a really important retelling of events in a way that also symbolizes greed and gluttony, and showing that a nation of people do everything that is necessary to survive to keep their people and traditions from dying out. I personally never felt much sympathy for Arthur. His character always made me feel uneasy and unsettled. A lot of that through his gluttony and hypocritical rhetoric, which I enjoyed. I did, however, always feel sympathy for Goodstab, having to convince himself that feeding on his own people was necessary for their survival, something Arthur could never understand. And I give the book 5 stars for the writing and combining historical events and horror fiction to make the audience feel uncomfortable about the events in American history. I think everyone should read this book and feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
So there you go.
All right.
Buffalo Hunter Hunter. That's a wrap on Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. We've laughed, theorized, and possibly developed a mild fear of taxidermy, but we made it to the end. We'd love to hear what you thought of the book.
Remember, we're taking a short break next week to rest our brains, but we'll be back on June 14th with our next read, Immaculate Conception by Ling Huang. We'll be diving into part 1 early style, so grab your copy and read along with us.
In the meantime, hit us up on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, or join our Discord. You'll find all the links in the show notes. Tell us your thoughts, your theories, or just come hang out with fellow book nerds. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy reading.
Our intro music is Upbeat Funk, performed by Mikhail Smusev, and our outro music is Lo-Fi Chill, medium version, performed by Bodan Kuzmin. You can find both tracks on pixabay.com. Thanks for joining us, family, and we'll see you next week.